Welcome to Stumbling Toward Genius. I'm your host, writing and creativity coach, Cynthia Morris. In this episode, you'll hear about a time where I, like many of us, desperately wanted to find my place, to find a place for my book and for me, and how that didn't seem likely to happen. There comes a fork in the road that happens at least once, probably many times, in a creative project. It's the moment when it seems like a much better idea to just freaking abandon ship, to ditch the project and all its difficulties and start something new, something fresh, something easy, to pop back to the beginning of a creative project where everything is all rosy and fun and exciting and possible, to abandon the part where you're humbled, where you're faced with the limitations of your skills, talents, and publishability. I call these moments commitment points, and this is the story of a big one. I was in London. It's not my favorite city, but I was willing to give it another try. This was a time when I was nomadic, traveling in Europe before a 7-week dog-sitting gig in Paris. I was seeking a publisher for my novel, Chasing Sylvia Beach. By this time, I'd written at least 16 drafts and had been rejected countless times. For me, traveling is a nice distraction. I was still working, and my laptop kept delivering bad news. The rejection letters were rolling in daily. As I said, there were a lot of them. One day in my Airbnb room, I got an email from the agent, the well-known agent who had basically written the book on how to get a book deal. Sitting on my bed in my room in London, I read her email on my laptop. She shredded. To paraphrase her letter, this novel doesn't have a plot, not even a thread of a plot. There was more, but the upshot of her note, hell no, and your book sucks. I closed the laptop and lay back on the bed. I felt the weight of the rejection pinning me down. Maybe she was right. Maybe there wasn't anything to my novel. I wanted to just burrow into the bed and get away from all the accumulated pain of all of those no's. I could take this as proof that my book was, truly not worth publishing, that there was no place for it in the world. But when in London or anywhere not home, it's nearly impossible to resist the pull of the city. There were things to do, to see, to eat. There was a shop I wanted to go to all the way across the city. So this is how I like to travel. There's a shop or a museum or a gallery or maybe a cafe that I've heard of and want to go to, and I use that as a destination. Along the way, I will discover things I didn't expect. At this moment, I didn't really feel like being out in the world. I felt like a raw nerve, and the last thing I wanted to do was be out among other humans. But I just couldn't stagnate in a rejection pool alone in my room. I pulled myself up and out of my stupor. I headed out and made my way across the city to the shop. My spirits brightened as I traveled through the city. It became easier to forget the digital ditching I'd just gotten. Walking along the sidewalk, I checked my notebook for the shop's address. It was just ahead there. I finally arrived and it was closed. Bark! My tiny bit of buoyancy deflated as I stared at the closed door. By now, the closed doors of all the agents and the closed door of the shop had me feeling like there was no place for me in this city, in this time, in this moment. I recalled my client, Beth. She had written a book about how to deal with the confusing and frustrating medical system. She'd survived a life-threatening illness despite the odds, and she had learned how to be her own best advocate. She wanted others to have the courage and persistence to advocate for themselves when facing the maze of healthcare. She realized that the only person who was going to stand up for herself was her. I stood on the sidewalk contemplating my next move. I wanted to give up on everything, on my book, on enjoying anything in London, on life. But I remembered Beth, and I also realized that the great thing about traveling is you kind of just have to keep going. It's hard to hide in your room or your routine at home. It's easier to let a place's temptations lure you out and out of your funk. Don't get me wrong, the funk was still there. But I was out and about and I just kind of had to keep going. I had wanted to see a show while in London. Wicked was playing, and it was playing that night. If I hurried, I could make it back across the city in time for the show. I figured out how to find the right bus and took a seat on the upper level. The city rolled past. I swayed and bounced with the bus. The moving cinema of the buildings and people scrolled by. The city's vitality pushed its way into my heart, and I was able to let go of the disappointments and simply ride. I got to the theater hoping for a last-minute discount. But when I asked, the guy at the box office, he seemed to take pleasure in telling me that no, there was no last-minute discounts. Arrgh. But I persisted. What about a student discount? Yeah, he said, we have a student discount, but there are requirements. What are they? I asked. He listed them. I lit up. I pulled out my student ID card and passed it under the window. He studied it, and I could feel his disappointment that I had a legit ID. But fuck him. Fuck him and all the people who seem to delight in rejecting others. I'd gotten the ID from taking an adult ed Italian class in 2008. The card was valid for 5 years, and oh, I milked it. It got me student discounts in museums and shops all around the world. So with my discount, I was able to get an affordable seat. But get this, it wasn't just a seat, it was the seat, the best seat, front and center, row 11. There happened to be one single seat in a prime spot, and it was mine. For once, it felt like a win to be a single woman traveling alone. And there was finally a place for me. I escaped into the relief and joy of a live show in London. It was fabulous. I took it all in as a balm against the rejections, not only from that day, but all the other rejections. I made sketch notes as I always did. You can see a sketch on this episode's page on my website. My favorite line from the show Wicked was, "Not everyone gets to come and go in a bubble." That's so true. But even though my goings to escape the disappointment of the novel and the comings, missed connections, and false starts didn't have me in a bubble, I felt safe. I felt in and of the world. Wicked was thrilling, and the finale was exhilarating. Its cry, "Wicked!" rang through me for days. Somewhere in the dark theater with the whirl of singing and dancing, I let the agent's world fall away. And I decided that I would keep going to publish the book no matter what. Self-publishing became more of a likelihood than an option. That decision would come soon enough. This happens again and again in our making. We come to a place where we're stopped by something someone says, or something our internal voice says, or by some external life event. And we have to recommit. We have to choose and choose and choose ourselves again and again. Every time we step up to work on our project, we choose ourselves. We stake a claim for the thing we love, the passion that stirs us to make, despite what anyone says. And we claim our power. We share our passion and let others become close to us through our books, our art, and our businesses. I'm still collecting rejections. I'm still faced with hearing others' opinions about my work, but it doesn't stop me. Here's what I don't want to tell you. Even though it sounds glamorous to travel around and work remotely, it can be incredibly lonely. Of course, a friend is just a click away, but on that day in London, a deep loneliness pervaded my steps. Sitting in a grassy park, surrounded by people who were chilling with their friends, I felt truly alone. While I know how to cope with these dark moments, I journal, I wander, I get out into the world like I did that day. These lonely moments still feel very difficult. But I've also learned that sometimes we need that space away from everyone to tap into our truth, to own our path, to recommit. And our creative projects, even when it feels tough, can be some of the best company we can find. This experience made me more committed to myself and my projects. I know that not all of my ideas are preciously perfect darlings, but that doesn't mean I have to let a mean outsider decide what I devote my time to. The commitment I make to myself and my work makes me feel like maybe not a genius, but definitely an empowered creative. I know what it means to be committed, but it doesn't mean being steadfastly and continuously stuck on your thing. It means sometimes you want to escape or switch to something else. Jump ship before you even get to shore. That's why I created the Original Impulse Atelier to help creative people stay with their projects when the going gets rough. In France, the Atelier has a long tradition. An atelier means a working studio where a master teaches a skill. You have your painting atelier, your sculpting atelier. This is the place where there's a focus and where you learn and grow with the help of a teacher. You could consider it a sort of apprenticeship. The Original Impulse Atelier is a year-long facilitated mastermind group. Each member focuses on one project for the whole year. But the skills we're mastering aren't skills of craft. We're mastering how to harness our genius in order to make the things that we care about the most. Enrollment for the 2020 Original Impulse Atelier has just opened. You can find out all about it at originalimpulse.com. Just look under the Workshops tab. If you have a project that you truly want to commit to in 2020, come check it out. Enrollment is limited and spaces are already filling up, so don't hesitate. Your assignment. This week's creative competency is commitment points. You will have to recommit many times over the course of a project. That's normal. Make it a chance to fall in love with it again and to remember why you're doing it. Obstacles will be there, plenty. Of that you can be sure. It's how we face them that's important. We are asked to recommit again and again, and to do so gladly. Take a look at the projects you've sustained over the years. What has helped you to recommit? Perhaps it's your values. Perhaps it's a bigger reason outside of yourself, like my client Beth, who wanted to help others. Perhaps you're just stubborn. Now take a look at the project you're working on now. What keeps you connected to your original impulse when all external advice seems to go against what you know deep down to be true for you? And if you've put a project on a shelf, ask yourself, what will help you recommit to it now? My dear genius, we need your voice. So please override the critic, the agent, the gatekeeper, the person who thinks it's their job to decide your fate. Take charge of your creative destiny and don't give up. Choose your art and choose yourself. We need your genius in the world. Head over to originalimpulse.com/podcast to download this week's assignment. Email me or leave a comment with insights you glean or actions you take as a result of the assignment. You'll find my contact info at originalimpulse.com. Thank you for listening to Stumbling Toward Genius. I hope this episode has helped you find your way towards your own genius and that you bravely take on your creative projects, no matter how much you stumble or how scary it is. Until next time, creative genius, have fun. Hello, hello. This is Xavier. I am Cynthia's friend. I'm calling in from Paris. There's something that I wanted to tell you about the Atelier. This is a French concept. It's something that is very, how do we say, traditionnel. And it is not for the pansies. It is not an easy thing. Cynthia would never tell you that, but this is what I want to say. It's something I have seen with these online classes, these online workshops, is that people, they sign up and they think, oh, boop, I have paid my money and it is done and now I don't have to do the work. But here's the deal with an atelier. It is a serious commitment. I'm not here trying to scare you, but I want to say there is no place to hide in an atelier. So I just had to add that because I know Cynthia wouldn't say that because you, peut-être, maybe Americans might be a little afraid of the rigueur that's involved in an atelier. But truthfully, vraiment, I think it's what you really want, isn't it? To really have someone take a stand for you and your creativity and for you to take a stand for that project. Okay, I've got to go. Cynthia's coming. That's it for me. Au revoir.